for Trump's assault on American cities. We're demanding that these companies provide us with answers to why they are choosing to platform this hatred, this scapegoating, and are complicit in what I believe is President Trump's authoritarian work. So the dangers are right here at home, and that's why we're speaking up in this committee, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I should have mentioned this earlier, and I apologize if any of you need a restroom break. Just let us know, or let some of your team behind us let us know. We will do that. We're going to go to the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank you to all of you on the panel for being here to share today. We've heard a lot in your testimony, and Dr. Rasna, I want to come to you. What Bible verse did you post that caused you to be criminally prosecuted?
Thank you. It was from the book of Romans, 1st chapter, and verses 24 to 27. Okay,
and could you help me know why you chose that particular passage to post?
The Apostle Paul teaches in these verses about the marriage and about the same-sex relationships, and he defines them as sinful and shameful.
And what message were you trying to convey in that?
I wanted to make it clear that if the leadership of the church is supporting the Pride event, it is in contradiction with its basis, the Bible.
Okay. And after you posted the Bible verse, if I understand correctly, you were charged under Finland's war crimes and crimes against humanity law.
Yes, we have in that section, we have a law about agitation against minorities.
Wow. Well, as a pastor for 37 years now myself, to think of someone that can be criminally charged for posting a Bible verse in the EU and NATO country worries me deeply. And as you've already heard from this panel today, God bless you. God bless you for coming here today to share your story. And my prayer is that it causes people to wake up to the threats that we are facing from those who seek to undermine our God-given right to free expression. We even saw just in a piece of the video clip that Mr. Biggs shared of when the storm was a church was stormed right there in Minneapolis, and leaving families scattering, and all kinds of threats that were felt that day, and still dealing with that even now. I also want to state to you, Mr. Price, one of the things that brings Western countries together is our shared values. And in my view, the right to freedom of speech is one of these values. While I understand our European counterparts have not always been as gung-ho, perhaps, about free speech as us in the United States, I never thought in 2026 we would be seeing people jailed for posting Bible verses or even crass jokes. Thankfully, high-profile Americans are calling out our friends for this madness. In February of 2025, Vice President Vance gave a high-profile speech at the Munich Security Conference in which he urged Europeans to turn away from censorship and re-embrace fundamental free speech principles. What effect, Mr. Price, do you think that Vice President's words had, and what signal did they send to Europe?
I think they were very impactful because the administration was shining a light on the nature of the problem. This is going to get worse. We have people being arrested for praying silently in the UK. We have people being prosecuted for posting Bible verses, for making jokes. The European Union is attempting now to export that through the Digital Services Act and force it on Americans, these European laws. And they're not going to back down easily because, as you can see with the approach they've taken to X, when a company commits itself to free speech, they have to stop that because of, as I say, I think they see it as an existential threat. And I'm ashamed to say, as an Irishman, my own country is playing a central role in this because most of these large US platforms are headquartered in Dublin. And it's the Irish regulator that's cooperating closely with the European Commission in enforcing this. And as I said on the last occasion, I really hope that the United States, using its diplomatic channels, brings this home to the Irish government, that forcing American companies to police American speech and generally to police anyone's speech is wrong, and that if they escalate in this direction, it's going to cause significant additional problems.
Well, and I applaud our Vice President for his speech, and I hope we can continue to remind our friends and allies of the value of free speech and expression. Unfortunately, we've heard in today's hearing, we have a long way to go. And Mr. Chairman, I yield back to you the balance of my time.
I thank the gentleman. We will
Mr.
just.
Chair, I have
will
a
yield back.
UC.
The gentlelady from Vermont is recognized.
Mr. Chair, I ask unanimous consent to introduce for the record a letter from Reverend Jared Weber Johnson of St. John's, the Evangelist Episcopal Church in St. Paul, Minnesota, which calls what is happening in Minnesota unlawful and unconstitutional, as well as a blasphemy against God.
Without objection.
Mr. Chairman,
The
I have a
gentlelady
UC.
from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record an article from The Hill entitled, Polls 62% think ICE efforts go too far. That includes 92% of Democrats, 65% of independents, and even 30% of Republicans, a 10-point shift in Republicans' attitudes to ICE.
Without objection. Mr. Raskin.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record this Minnesota Star Tribune article from February 2nd titled Another Wave of Departures in Minnesota's U.S. Attorney's Office as 14 additional attorneys left this year.
Without objection. The gentleman from Illinois is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I join my Democratic colleagues in denouncing this sham hearing, which is an effort to distract from the brutal assault on First Amendment rights by the Trump administration and its lackeys in Congress. The greatest threat to free speech and dissent is the Republican Party today. We're in the midst of an authoritarian crackdown on the First Amendment, led by ICE and CBP agents who are murdering American citizens in peaceful protest while the president threatens to sue a comedian over a joke. That ain't funny. These attacks have escalated, but they're not new. Republicans have gutted funding for colleges and universities while trying to dictate the academic content and make it more right-wing. They've weaponized the immigrant system against Mahmoud Khalil, Rumeus Osterk, and others who dared to speak for Palestinian rights. They've literally banned the federal government from using words and phrases they're terrified of, like women, oh my God, diverse, holy cow, affordable housing, who would ponder that? Clean water, you want to drink dirty? And equality, think of that. I thought all persons were created equal. And these attacks have not spared the Chicagoland region. Republicans have attacked Chicago and Illinois for our welcoming policies and illegally tried to withhold funding on decisions, based on decisions by local officials. They funded mass death squads that killed, in my district, Silverio Villegas Gonzalez, shot Marimar Martinez, who was here in the U.S. Senate yesterday, and spread violence and terror in our streets. And as our neighbors exercise their First Amendment rights to peacefully protest the severe abuses at the Broadview facility, they were met with brutal repression by the federal government. A pastor was shot in the head with pepper balls right adjacent to my district. Journalists were tear gassed, and 6 protesters, including local elected officials, were arrested on vague conspiracy charges without substantial evidence. These charges and the actions of federal agents overall constitute a fascist attack on democracy. But we're not backing down. We continue to nonviolently protest, and the courts have struck down the attacks on welcoming policies and the extreme use of force against protesters and journalists at Broadview. Mr. Mayo, thank you for being here today and for the work that you've done keeping Minnesotans safe. I deeply appreciated your testimony at the field hearing that many of us attended in Minneapolis a couple of weeks ago. Can you speak to how the administration's occupation in our neighborhoods, in our cities, and our basic freedoms has escalated over the past year from Los Angeles to Chicago to the Twin Cities?
Yes, I think that you can look at what is happening in Minnesota as part of a broader pattern of abuse that has been, and brutality that has been documented in court after court across the country. And that includes the targeting of protesters and observers, and also the targeting of immigrants, and the due process rights that are being violated in the process of arrests and of apprehending immigrants. And that's a really important piece of this conversation here, is the racial profiling and the warrantless arrests that are happening on the streets of Minnesota right now.
And Mr. Mayo, can you talk about what you take away from the things that have mobilized people in Minneapolis like we haven't seen anywhere else in the country? What's at the heart of it?
What I can say is that the people of Minnesota have been disrupted, are shocked, are in a state of grief, and they are opposing what they're seeing as unlawful, unconstitutional, un-American activity on their streets. And this goes across party lines, across employment. You are seeing it with law enforcement. You are seeing it with elected leaders. Again, this is not normal law enforcement. This is not normal what is happening in Minnesota, and it should alarm everybody.
Time of the gentleman has expired. The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it's worth noting, just for the people watching this hearing, that what's happening in Minnesota appears to be fairly unique to Minnesota. Local leftist law enforcement have abrogated their responsibilities to maintain order, and rather they are encouraging attack on federal law enforcement. It's not happening in my state. It's not happening in South Carolina, Texas, Florida, even California. So what's happening in Minnesota is a unique circumstance that is aggravated by the left and the left only. And my colleague who preceded me is a suitable spokesman and an able spokesman for the Democratic Party. It's worth noting that his home state, while illegals are welcomed in droves to Illinois, lured there by traditional leftist overtures, what he left out is that for more than 10 consecutive years, hundreds of thousands of Americans have left Illinois because of high costs, high crime, in a landscape that is unrecognizable to most people who used to see Chicago and Illinois as a flagship for American exceptionalism. The left has destroyed Illinois, and Americans have shown that with their movement. Dr. Raisin, I want to start with you by thanking you for taking a stand, and you, in many ways, represent concern that Christians all over the world fear, that is, growing hostility towards our faith from leftist governments. And I want to talk to you specifically about what you were prosecuted for. You did not post a Bible verse in an official capacity, correct?
Yes, I posted it
But it was not part of a state action. It was,
No.
It was a personal action, correct?
Yes, my personal.
And then you issued a pamphlet in your personal capacity.
Yes, it is here.
Yes. You did not incite. You did not advocate for violence. You did not advocate for the silencing.
No,
Is that correct?
absolutely not. And I said, for example, in this pamphlet that I believe that all people are equal and we have to respect all people.
And in regards to your litigation, your case, you won your case at the trial level, correct?
Yes,
How many times?
2 times.
2 times.
Yes.
And then the prosecutor appealed.
Yes, it is possible in Finland, even though that you are acquitted, that the prosecutor can appeal to the Supreme Court, which
so
is
this-
the highest level.
What remedy is this prosecutor looking for? Do they want to put you in jail? Do they want to fine you?
They want they want to fine me, but what is the most dangerous? They want to ban, for example, this booklet
Yeah.
and my Twitter post.
Well, ultimately, they want to ban your belief in Scripture. They want to ban your ability to cite the Bible, to
Yes.
believe in the Bible.
Yes,
And to make it socially unacceptable to do so, correct?
yes.
And I want to make this very clear. As a former prosecutor myself, I find it grossly offensive that the resources of the state are going after wonderful people like you while crime of every sort has increased over the last number of years in your home country. Property crimes, sex crimes, violent crime. They're increasing, and they're going after you.
Yes,
That's
and
just-
at almost 7 years now.
That's disgusting. And again, thank you for your faith, thank you for your bravery, and know that we are behind you in full support.
Thank you.
Mr. Price, I want to talk to you. You said that speech was the chief threat to the European Union. You can go ahead and answer that.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yes, sir. Indeed, that is how they see it, unfortunately. What I would say is, as far as the European Union is concerned, and we've seen this again and again from the President of the Commission, from senior European leaders, they regard misinformation, disinformation, these very nebulous, vague terms, and hate speech as a threat to the democratic cohesion of it. And what I think is quite interesting, and I don't want to go too far into a history lesson, but all of this started after Brexit, the election of Donald Trump for his first term, and the migrant crisis in the EU. Before that, we had essentially almost no regulation on online speech.
Right.
We had an e-commerce directive and a few other pieces of legislation, but nothing on content as such at an EU level. The Germans were the first to move. They brought in their own draconian law. And then, as often happens in the European Union, everybody follows Germany. And since then, we've just added more and more layers of this. And now it's really starting to bite because they're trying to destroy, frankly, X.
And now they're going after X
Yes.
with lock, stock, barrel. And you have one individual in Elon Musk's whose companies exceed the GDP of most European countries. You'd think that they would welcome Elon Musk to try to incentivize some type of freedom, economic activity, economic expansion, but they're attacking him.
Yeah, the story of the next couple of decades for all of us will be watching Europe descend into a significant series of crises, demographic, economic, and so on. It's going to be a real tragedy. And the only solution they have is don't talk about it, just ignore it. And that's why they've targeted X.
Thank you, sir.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Mr. Chairman?
Gentleman from Illinois is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, per UC, I want to submit the following articles for the record. Elon Musk Grok AI chat box made millions of sexualized images, new estimates show. New York Times, January 22nd. Elon Musk's X faces EU inquiry over sexualized AI images generated by Grok, January 26th. New York Times. Grok, Elon Musk AI, is generating sexualized images of real people, fueling outrage, January 8, 2026.
Objection. Gentleman from the floor is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Man, if you want to know how things are going on in America, I mean, just look at my colleagues. I mean, they want to talk about Europe because things are going so well here. You know, Mr. Chairman, Secretary Noem is scheduled to appear here in a month, and I'm going to say something that might surprise you. I don't think she should come. You know why I don't think she should come? Because I think she should be fired before that. She shouldn't be here. So if you want to invite her as a private citizen, no problem. You know, Leader Thune was asked, does he have confidence in her? He said, that's up to the president. Josh Hawley was asked, would he vote for her again? He says, thank God he doesn't have to. That real vote of confidence there. Senator Kennedy wants Tom Homan to run the show. By the way, he now is. Senator Tillis wants her fired. Senator Murkowski wants her fired. Congresswoman Malliotakis says all options should be on the table with who should run the agency. Not a single Republican House member or senator is running to the television to defend Noem. And by the way, President Trump, wasn't lost on me, skipped her in his cabinet meeting just a couple days ago. She was the only secretary he didn't allow to talk. It's time to fire her. Why hasn't it happened? I know what I need to do. I need to remind the president who he used to be. I want to take you down memory lane. You know what we need? We need Apprentice Trump. Where is that guy? Look, let me remind him who he used to be real quick.
You're fired. 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 You're all fired. All four are fired.
Where is that guy? What happened to him? I mean, Mr. President, you had one of the most popular TV shows, right? People would tune in weekly. You would fire the weakest link of your team. People loved it when you fired people, Mr. President. Sitting in the boardroom, Eric on one side, Junior on the left. It was much-watched TV. You made millions of dollars firing people for a living. But now someone convinced you firing people is weakness. That's why ratings are down, Mr. President. It would be much-watched TV. Think about it, Mr. President. Tens of millions of people will tune in. You bring Kristi Noem into your little conference room. You have a cabinet meeting, right? And you fire her right there on TV. Oh, the ratings would be through the roof. Think about the hat she would wear. I mean, it'll be majestic, okay? Let me show you, Mr. President, what that might look like.
I put you over here to help this team, and you didn't help the team.
Well, I tried the best I can.
I know you did, but you didn't help the team.
I can't be completely responsible for repeating.
I put you over here to help the team. You know that, right?
Yes, Mr.
Kristi, you're fired. Wow.
That's how that would look, right? I would watch it. We would all watch it. Mr. President, you fired people so many times, they even made a doll about you firing people. I bought it on Amazon. It was $9. Obviously, it's doing very well. But look, you take this doll out. Probably made in China. You take the doll out, and look, it's got, very nicely done, by the way. If any of my Republican friends want to spend time with it later, I'll loan it to them. Look, so here's the doll. It says to fire people in 17 different ways. You go to the back, you push it. Batteries are a little old. Let's see if I can find the little button. Well, anyway, it says you're fired. 17 different ways, Mr. President. Okay? So I don't understand what the problem is. I don't get it. For years, you fired people. It was strength. Now you think that's weakness. I mean, if we can't get Apprentice Trump, can we at least get, like, Home Alone 2 Trump? Can he at least, like, show her the lobby and out the door? She's coming here in a month, okay? It's not going to be a good hearing for her. It's going to be a disaster. You all are going to have to defend her, which you're not willing to do on TV. This will be very televised. I mean, why did the president not let her speak in the cabinet meeting? Why didn't she get to talk, right? Why is Tom Homan now running the department? Why is Roger Stone taking shots at her? It's time for her to be fired. She is the weakest link of his team, and it's enough. And again, I got plenty of material, as you see, Mr. President, to remind you how to do it. Just go back, go on your reruns, go find some old episodes for some inspiration. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. I will recognize myself. Real quickly, just on a lighter note, Mr. Price, do you think that the congressman might have been censored in what he said and what he did if it was up to the EU?
Yes, sir. Under German legislation, he's engaged in criminal insult to a politician.
Is that what happened to Jimmy Kimmel?
And in a...
My time,
moreover, he might well have been violating electoral disinformation, which would mean that the EU's watchdog on electoral disinformation would be following. Luckily, he's in Florida, of course, and he can invoke the First Amendment.
Because we still have...
It doesn't look like this isn't disinformation. They made a doll.
I remind the gentleman from Florida, this is not his time, that he had his time. I thank the gentleman. I don't know where to begin, but let me begin by how do I say this? I really want to try to be a little friendlier to the other side here, but it's always politics, 24/7. The damn hearing isn't about politics. Quite frankly, it isn't about Minnesota particularly. It isn't about that issue. Is that issue worthy of discussion? Absolutely. But the issue here was the threat to America's freedom by foreign countries. Now, just in case anybody needs a reminder, I don't think we do. We got a real lot of smart people in this room. American men and women died so that we have that freedom of speech? American men and women were willing to give up everything so we have that freedom. This is a big deal. And it's always the politics of the day on the other side. It's always whatever's the hot issue, but nothing to do with the hearing is about. And the hearing is important because we really could lose our freedoms. We have other countries controlling the hard-fought freedoms of the United States of America. It's terrible. It's awful. And that's why we're having this hearing. And I thank you all for being here. Mr. Mayall, I'm not trying to give you a hard time, but you're from the ACLU. You're a really smart guy. You know your stuff, right? You're pretty smart. I mean, if I ask you a question, they wanted you to talk about Minnesota because God forbid we talk about the real issue, but you should be able to answer issues of the loss of freedom, whether you're liberal, conservative, Republican, or Democrat, socialist, progressive, I don't care what you are. You should have that right to speak about what you believe. If you're a Christian, you should be able to have that right. If you're Islamic, you should be able to have that right. That's what this hearing's about. And most of all, Mr. Mayall, the hearing is about whether you are an American and you have that right. It's not just, we need another politician here talking about politics. We need somebody that's going to tell us what that freedom really means and what the First Amendment really means. Mr. Price, I'm going to ask you a few questions. I just need yeses or nos because I want to not run out of time. Yes or no? Major social media platforms generally apply one global set of content moderation rules worldwide. We're part of globalism now. We're all the same. Yes or no?
Yes.
Because platforms rely on global rules, global, not American rules. Forgive me, I know some of us aren't American, but I want to talk about America. Global rules, changes to those rules affect users or people that cherish freedom in America. It affects us, yes or no?
Yes, it does.
Under the Digital Services Act, platforms can be fined up to 6% of their global revenue for non-compliance. Yes or no?
Global turnover, yes, sir.
That's a real effective way to stop freedom and freedom of speech. That's what we're supposed to be talking about today, not all this other stuff. We can have a hearing. We are going to have Christine Noem. We are going to have the Attorney General. We are going to have other hearings. We may have a hearing on Minnesota. And we'll talk about those issues then. But let's talk about this big, bad issue that threatens the very foundation of America and American freedom, for God's sake. Yes or no? Are the threats of fines that large designed to pressure platforms to over-censor speech to avoid getting punished in that way?
Yes, sir, they have that effect.
Yes or no? When Americans are censored because of foreign government pressure, they have no ability. Talk about taxation without representation. This is worse. You lose your freedom of speech, and you have no ability to get those people out of office. They're in another country. They're not liable to you at all, but you have to acquiesce to them. Yes or no?
Yes, we can't get them out of office either.
I know, it's scary. If Americans are losing their speech rights because of laws written overseas, then this is not just a tech issue. This is not some boring issue that people want to put in a closet somewhere where people yawn and forget about it. It's freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the way to raise your family the way you want to, all the freedoms that we cherish in America. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Is it a direct attack on American sovereignty, and shouldn't we do everything we can to stop it?
Absolutely.
That's the bottom line here, ladies and gentlemen. This is a big deal. I'm sorry for what you went through. God knows, I mean, it doesn't matter if they agree with your faith. It's your faith, and it's your right to represent that faith, and you shouldn't go to jail, and you shouldn't be fined, and you shouldn't be embarrassed, and you shouldn't be censored. Damn it, we're sick of it. And so instead of talking about that, which is an area we should all agree on, Republican and Democrat, what do? We avoid it and we go to the political issues of the day. Every hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I think
the
the gentleman's time has expired by 49 seconds.
My time has expired, yes, and I think the real chairman's going to take over now.
We have about 20 minutes. If you can all hang with us 20 minutes, that'd be great. I think we're going to recognize the gentleman from Wisconsin, and then Ms. Hegeman, the gentleman from South Carolina, and then Mr. Onder from Missouri. So, gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
Sure, thanks. I'm very glad we're having this hearing. I think it's a very scary hearing, not only because our platforms can be affected by laws abroad, but frequently what happens in the United States I guess I'd say the decline in the United States right now that we see in our culture sometimes follows a decline in Europe. And when we hear what's going on in Europe today, we have to be really careful what's going to happen in this country. When I think that last time a presidential candidate got 48% of the vote after the administration she was in tried to set up a disinformation governance board. I mean, once that was done, that probably should have been in Timbuktu for a long time. But in any event, Mr. Rice, could you give us some more, just quick examples? I'm going to yield to my chairman. Some quick examples, egregious examples, so the American listening public can know the type of speech they are banning in what used to be the wonderful bastion of freedom, Europe.
Yes, sir. Well, my client here beside me, Päivi Räsänen, has given a very good account of what's happened to her, and myself and my colleague Paul Coleman were very honoured to stand beside her in her Supreme Court hearing. But that's just only one part of it. In the United Kingdom, in London, where I'm living at the moment, we have a situation where people are being criminally prosecuted for praying silently, for offering to have conversations with people in public places.
Anti-Christianity in Europe.
I think that is a very accurate way of describing it, yes. We have situations where people are being prosecuted for reading scripture when other people find it offensive, particularly people from the Islamic community, and they've made criminal complaints. We act for those as well. We have a client, for example, Rose Doherty in Scotland, who held a sign saying, "I'm here to talk if you want," and 5 police officers arrived to arrest, detain, and search her for breaching Scottish law in relation to that. There are many examples. I've given some statistics in my written testimony which outline the dire state of affairs, and I think it's entirely correct when Vice President Vance said when he was in Munich that we now have a civilizational divide opening up between Europe and the United States. That would be bad enough for us on our own if it wasn't for the fact that the European Union is trying to impose it on you as well by virtue of these tech regulations such as the DSA.
Thank you. I'm going to yield to my great chairman.
Thank you. Thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Price, why are they really going after X?
Sir, it's my view that they're going after X because X has decided to take a maximalist position of free speech, to have the most possible free speech. And that's inimical to their view, which is that we cannot have free speech.
The left love Elon Musk until he spent, what did he say? I didn't spend $50 billion to buy Twitter. I spent $50 billion to save the First Amendment. So they loved him before he bought X and said, I'm going to honor the First Amendment and respect the First Amendment. Would you agree, Mr. Linehan?
Yes, and the effect of all these policies in Europe is, I'll give you one example. In Dublin recently, there were riots. And I've never seen riots in Dublin in my life. You know, this is because people cannot speak honestly about the thing that matters most to them at the moment, which is unchecked immigration, you know. And that frustration and the kind of silencing of alternative voices is what's leading, I think, to things like riots. And I think long-term we could see societal collapse. I really do think that it's a possibility in some countries.
In last Congress, we had a journalist from Canada, Rupert Supermanier, came here, testified. She had covered the trucker crisis in Canada back during COVID. She had covered that and been censored for her, as a journalist, had been censored.
Yes.
And she sat right there and said the same thing you did. She said the hallmark of Western civilization is free debate, free expression. Yes. And to your point, if you don't have that, the alternative is scary, right?
Yeah.
Because you can't settle, then disputes don't get settled via debate, they get settled via some other way. And that's the scary thing. And that is what is so frustrating. I mean, the DOJ, the SEC, the FTC all go after Elon Musk here in the United States after he buys Twitter. And now we got Spain, the UK, Ireland all going after him, France going after him, the EU. Never before when he was on the left. But as soon as he comes out for free speech, free expression, here comes the government. Scary, scary world. And again, thank you all for, I do have to run. I apologize. We're going to let someone else chair. We are down to the last 20 minutes. Before I recognize the gentlelady from North Carolina, I want to say thank you all for coming. We appreciate it. And Doctor, thank you. Many people have said it, but the courage that you've shown, and frankly, the courage Mr. Linehan has shown when you're attacked for speaking your mind. And God bless you. We really appreciate you all being here, Mr. Price and Mr. Maywell. We appreciate you. We will all have you all back at some point as well. With that, I recognize the gentlelady from North Carolina for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I find it ironic that my Republican colleagues are spending this committee's time talking about an imagined threat of Europe to America's freedom of speech and innovation. Never has freedom of speech in this country been more under threat, maybe since the Alien and Sedition Act. But the threat isn't coming from Brussels. It's coming from inside the White House and the President's cabinet. We're seeing this administration send masked, roving paramilitary forces to cities whose leaders have stood up to the President. We're seeing these agents use the excuse of immigration enforcement to execute American citizens in the street for exercising their freedom of speech and their freedom of assembly. And if you're executed without a trial, don't worry. The administration's chief propagandists will make up the reason why you deserved it 10 minutes after the news breaks. Probably because you committed domestic terrorism by filming them. Even Saturday Night Live had a good time with that last weekend. Or helping a woman up who had been pushed to the ground. In my state of North Carolina, ICE and CBP descended on cities, snatching up people based on the color of their skin or because of where they worked. Frequently, US citizens. And it's not just Republicans in the federal executive branch that are going after freedom of speech. When ProPublica was researching a story on how Paul Newby, the Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court, politicized a once impartial and respected institution, the spokesman for the North Carolina Republican Party told ProPublica that, quote, "I'm sure you're aware of our connections with the Trump administration, and I'm sure they would be interested in this matter, and I would strongly suggest you dropping this story." The Trump administration called Renee Good and Alex Preddy agitators and domestic terrorists. They've used rubber bullets, real bullets, tear gas, and military equipment against peaceful protesters. The administration is calling everyday Minnesotans who record ICE and CBP officers agitators. Mr. Mayel, does recording immigration enforcement agents make someone an agitator?
You have a First Amendment right to record and video law enforcement.
Does delivering meals to neighbors too scared to leave their home make someone an agitator?
Delivering meals is not unlawful activity.
Does standing outside a school pickup line to make sure your child's friend doesn't get abducted make someone a domestic terrorist?
My understanding of the definition of domestic terrorism does not match any of what we have seen.
Yet all of this is happening in your state.
Our state is under siege in a way that we have not seen, certainly not in my lifetime, and free speech is under threat in a way that, in the most significant way that we have seen in our lifetime, and the rule of law is under siege.
Well, I appreciate your testimony today. I appreciate what you're doing during this very difficult time to protect Americans' right to free speech. Every time I do a town hall and people ask me what they can do, I remind them that in this country we have the First Amendment. And the only way we can change things is to use every single right in the First Amendment. So pull out your Constitution and pick what you're going to do, whether it's praying, speaking, petitioning the government for redress of grievance. We have all those rights in this country. And we should be proud of our citizens for standing up against their government when their rights are being infringed. Mr. Chairman or Madam Chairwoman, I didn't notice, thank you. I have a unanimous consent request. It's from the San Antonio Express News, January 25th, 2026. Pete Hegseth censures Mark Kelly for saying the things he himself said.
So ordered.
Thank you very much, and I yield back.
Thank you. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questioning. Mr. Linehan, in your testimony, you describe how the UK police identify what they refer to as non-crime hate incidents against citizens, even if there's no actual violation of the law. Talk about Orwellian. Could you please briefly explain for us what a non-crime hate incident is?
It's essentially the British government's attempt to control people's speech without appearing to. Non-crime hate incidents, they don't, I believe they appear on background checks, but it's very hard to find out what they have, what they are saying about you. I was invited to the Conservative Party conference in the UK, and my accreditation was turned down. I still don't know why. The Conservative Party overthrew it, but I have a feeling that the kind of popular conception about me being a bigot and so on has found its way into the police files.
So you're saying these allegations against British citizens are actually appear on your record like a criminal conviction, but there is no criminal conviction, is that
That's right? That's right.
All right, this sounds to me like a form of a social credit score where the state uses taxpayer funds to collect information on its citizens as a mechanism for public shaming. Is that a fair description?
I would say so, yes.
So, and then are these so-called non-crime hate incidents, are they at least enforced equally? In other words, are these targeted against people of certain religious or political beliefs or against people who fail to subscribe to in vogue woke ideology?
Well, I'm not sure. I think, as I said earlier, I think the UK police, their main job now is keeping the people under control, because too many of them are noticing things that are worrying them, things that they want to talk about, and they're not being allowed to talk about it. For instance, the BBC for 10 years now has basically ignored the gender issue completely, which means that the side of the story that is, just a very kind of calm and compassionate laying out of things that feminists believe is just unspoken on the BBC. So, so I don't know much about the operation of non-crime hate incidents, but I believe because of my arrest, they say they're not going to prosecute them anymore. They're not going to bring them, investigate them. So I'm hoping that's true.
Well, but isn't it a fact that the information is then often used by employers, banks, people who may have invited you to speak, to actually ruin someone's life, a person that has not been convicted of any crime, but in this shadowy netherworld of surveillance and observation and trying to define what is appropriate speech and inappropriate speech, it's actually ruining people's lives or preventing people from getting jobs simply because of this nebulous anti-free speech otherworld.
Sure, yeah.
Well, and how did we come to this point? How did a European country claiming to be free and which allied with us, with our country to defeat mankind's greatest threats to freedom in the 20th century, here they are, they have now become this type of a very ugly, censorious regime. How did that happen?
Because they won't fix the problems that are causing the, some people have been arrested for genuinely violent speech, and they've gotten into trouble for that. But a lot of people are frustrated simply because they cannot speak about the things that matter to them. And when they do speak about the things that matter to them, they're labeled as bigots or racists, So, and also, I think it's the same here as well, in the sense that
Yes, it is.
it's not just the absence of people talking about it, it's mainstream legacy media directing people's attention elsewhere and simply not reporting on things. So I think there's just a huge bubbling sense of frustration that could, as I said earlier, lead to some sort of societal collapse. I don't think that's out of the question at all.
I think that your warning in that regard is very well taken, at least for some of us on this panel. The first act of a tyrant is to strip you of your right to speak, because they know that their policies and ideas cannot withstand scrutiny, which is, I believe, what you're saying. They cannot survive being mocked. And I think that we're seeing that repeatedly in England, in Spain, in France, in other countries. We're seeing it here as well. We do have the First Amendment, freedom of speech. We have the right for freedom of speech. But what I have been observing in terms of what is going on in Europe is they cannot tolerate dissent. They cannot tolerate alternative views because they cannot tolerate the scrutiny that will come with allowing people to freely speak and having to defend the horrific policies that they've been implementing in their countries for the last couple of decades. I'm out of time. I now am going to call on the gentleman from South Carolina for his 5 minutes of questioning. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Price, are the Online Safety Act and the Digital Services Act extraterritorial in scope?
They, in effect, are, yes.
But they were not designed that way originally, right?
Well, that's a very good question. I think there's enough ambiguity that that was the intention, in my view. It's not precise.
At our last hearing, Mr. Farage, that you were here, Mr. Farage discussed the emergence of a two-tiered system of justice and how censorship efforts in the EU and the UK disproportionately target conservatives and individuals critical of their governments, particularly on issues like migration. Under the DSA, would a statement like, "We need to take our country back," be considered illegal hate speech?
It was given, in fact, that very phraseology as an example of something that would be in some of the documents that this committee has revealed.
Right, that was in the European Commission's May 2025 workshop, right?
Yes, correct.
In your opinion, do you think that there is a migrant crisis in Europe?
There is a very serious crisis in Europe with migration, and I agree entirely with Graham that it's fueling a lot of political division because our governments are not seen to take action on it, not take seriously. You saw in Spain recently, over 500,000 migrants, their status was changed, they were regularized or legalized, and then almost immediately afterwards, the Spanish Prime Minister is announcing that he intends to launch a major crackdown on what he describes as hate speech online. I don't think those things are unconnected. I think they're very much connected. And this is what we're seeing across the European Union as well, a desperate attempt to hold together the civic discourse by using censorship and threats. And that's precisely, and it's very interesting talking to Ranking Member Raskin about this, it's precisely the opposite of the tradition of this country historically. You have the debate out in open here, whereas in Europe, you silence, you suppress, and you arrest. Now, the problem with the DSA is, we've been describing, that takes the European approach to things and it globalizes it and it forces on it Americans.
Right, so I think that's kind of remarkable. So that if you live in Europe and you recognize this migrant crisis, you see the strain maybe on the social, the system itself, you see the money that's being spent, and you're kind of wondering, what about us that live here? And you were to speak out about that, that would be hateful speech, therefore illegal under the DSA, just by speaking out about it. Briefly, under the DSA, who determines what qualifies as hate speech or deceptive content? Who makes that determination?
That's made in practice by national regulators, by local law enforcement. So we all come down, unfortunately, to the lowest common denominator. And in effect, I don't mean to be attacking Germany all the time. It's Germany. The Germans and, I mean, the UK has its own system outside of the DSA. But the level of crackdown on speech in Germany is unprecedented. 60 Minutes did a very good documentary highlighting that issue. And because of the German obsession with controlling speech, that has been now expanded across the European Union and is now being globalized, unfortunately, through the DSA, we're seeing everything set to that standard.
So in effect, this is a subjective determination by some faceless, unelected, unaccountable bureaucrat that is making the determination on what hate speech is or deceptive content is or is not. Do you trust EU bureaucrats to define hate speech when they label, "We need to take our country back" as such?
No, I don't. And as I say, most of the raft of digital regulation that we've seen came in on foot of the so-called rise of the right, the Brexit vote. And that's very tightly connected. It's caused by that. It's correlated with it. And the reason being that they felt they had lost narrative control. And Graham's correct. the legacy media in Europe is heavily funded by the state in many accounts, whereas with X, people can post their opinions, they can get millions of views for them.
Right, it's a free exchange of ideas, right?
Free exchange of ideas.
The modern public square. Under the DSA, companies are required to monitor and censor such language, and violations obviously would result in fines or maybe even FBI raids or federal raids in Paris on X, right? That's the next
yes, sir, that's what
punitive step.
Yeah, and lawyers are often careful about making predictions, but I confidently predict that the next round of fines on X will be connected with illegal content and this content moderation for systemic risk. They identify so-called anti-migration narratives or others as a systemic risk to the discourse inside the European Union, and they have to stop it. And it's not just Europeans, and this is where this becomes global. If you're in Texas or South Carolina or New York, and you're commenting on what's going on in Europe, saying, you know, the migration situation is a disaster, they don't want that speech to leak across into Europe. So either X will start to globally moderate it by removing it, or we're going to see a firewall being set up in the center of the Atlantic, and that would be a disaster even further for free speech. It creates exactly what Vice President Vance described as this civilizational divide.
Well, it's alarming to me. I just visited the DMZ a couple months ago, and the divide between the West and South Korea, if you will, and then North Korea. This seems like, and the suppression, the lengths that the North Koreans go to make sure that things don't come into the country, this sounds exactly like where Europe is headed, and hopefully they can course correct and that we never follow them on this path. Thank you, Madam Chair. With that, I yield. Mr. Chair.
The gentleman yields back. I want to recognize myself for 5 minutes. First, I want to personally thank you, Mr. Lenehan, and you, Dr. Rasnahan, for your courage in speaking out against gender ideology. I share your conviction, and I speak out because of my own medical training and my understanding of human biology. Most concerning of all, this ideology is dangerous when it's imposed upon our children. For years, many of us have raised alarms on this issue, despite knowing that it would be unpopular. I'm often asked why I continue to press this point. The answer is simple: because we are confident we are right, and we believe that finally now mainstream medicine in the United States is catching up. We're late to the game compared to some of our colleagues in Europe. Just yesterday, a major U.S. medical association, the American Association of Plastic Surgeons, reversed its position and came out against so-called gender-affirming surgeries for minors. They did so for very good reasons that many of us have articulated for years, because these procedures do more harm than good, and they are not supported by solid clinical evidence. And in response, the American Medical Association then acknowledged that it is time to stop performing these surgeries on children. That is why I've worked with the Attorney General, who transmitted the Chloe Cole Act to Congress. This bill would allow all victims who are permanently harmed by the experimental transgender procedures to sue for damages. And I look forward to continuing that conversation when the Attorney General testifies next week. Mr. Price, I'm going to read you something that Pope Leo the 14th said when he was serving as bishop in Peru. And I'd like you to tell me whether this would be considered hate speech under current European law. Quote, "The idea of promoting gender ideology is confusing because it creates genders that don't exist. So God created men and women, and the attempt to confuse ideas from nature will only harm families and people." And he further said, "To talk about matters of identity and sexual orientation with a child who hasn't yet reached a sufficient age of development will create much confusion." In your opinion, would this be considered hate speech and subject to censorship and prosecution under European law?
I think it's entirely possible that a prosecutor, a regulator somewhere in Europe could see that as denigrating a specific identifiable group.
Yeah, and so I believe, I'm Catholic, this accurately reflects Catholic doctrine on this subject. It's actually, actually kind of a soft statement of it, in fact. The Catholic faith is shared by 1.4 billion people around the world. So potentially, the faith of 1.4 billion people around the world is hate speech.
Yes,
Potentially.
we've seen examples. There's Päivi Räsänen sitting beside me,
Yeah.
of people being prosecuted for their religious beliefs.
So I would like to ask you, Doctor, you were questioned by police about a message from the book of Romans and the meaning of the word sin, and you were charged with a crime, one categorized as a crime against humanity. The prosecutor even lectured you on the gospel itself. Now, you were quoting from the book of Romans, from the Bible, considered by 2.6 million Christians around the world to be the inspired word of God. And yet, this text you quoted was considered to be hate speech. Do I understand your case correctly?
Yes, you understand.
So it's fair to say that the Finnish government adopted the position that speaking what you consider, and many, probably billions of Christians around the world consider to be biblical truth, they consider that to be hate speech.
Yes, in fact, it is the prosecutor general who has said and who has claimed that this is hate speech. This is against the law about agitation against minorities.
Yeah. Well, thank you. You know, this is to describe the current European censorship regime as Orwellian. I'll tell you, the Big Brother had nothing on the European censorship industrial complex. From George Orwell's 1984, the Ministry of Truth concerns itself with lies. War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. In the end, the party could announce that 2 and 2 make 5, and you would have to believe it. So we have a regime where boys can be girls, COVID came from pangolins in a wet market, toddlers should be wearing masks, Trump was elected by the Russians, and speech we don't like is hate speech. Western civilization is in a sorry state if we reject freedom of speech. Thank you all, and I yield back.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a few UC requests.
Without objection.
Thank you kindly. Elon Musk, king of censorship, 10 times the free speech absolutist silenced Twitter users.
Without objection.
Mondo, Salon, Trump's war on comedy threatens the free speech for all Americans.
Without objection.
And ACLU.org, September 16, 2025, Trump is firing federal workers over beliefs he doesn't like.
Without objection.
And finally, Trump calls for
2024, Thierry Breton of the European Commission, which is the executive branch of the European Union, sends a letter to Elon Musk. And I just want to read the first sentence, because I think this captures what we're talking about, what this hearing is about. It says, "Dear Mr. Musk, I am writing to you in the context of recent events in the United Kingdom and in relation to the planned broadcast on your platform X of a live conversation between a U.S. presidential candidate and yourself, which will also be accessible to users in the EU." So we've highlighted this first sentence. And I think this first sentence kind of captures it all. Here's someone from the European Commission, the executive branch of the European government, writing an American citizen about an American company and about the American presidential election. And he said the catalyst, the context, the reason he's doing that are events that are happening in a different country, the United Kingdom, not even a member of the European Commission, about an interview that's going to take place between Mr. Musk and the American presidential candidate. So, to America, also not part of the EU, about events happening in the UK, not part of the EU, but this individual thinks that they're going to regulate the speech and are concerned about what may take place in this interview. That's the context for all of this. We called this out. We called it what it was: censorship and election interference. The European Commission said, don't worry, Mr. Breton acted alone. Really? We didn't think Mr. Breton acted alone at all. He was just foolish enough to say the quiet part out loud. A year ago, this committee started issuing subpoenas to tech companies, big and small. We asked them to give us your communications with foreign officials regarding censorship. The production started rolling in. The European Commission successfully pressured social media companies to change their global content moderation rules, directly harming the speech of Americans in the United States. This hearing is not about whether European governments can censor their citizens. They do it. It's wrong. We know that. But this hearing is about, we disagree with that, but this hearing is about whether American speech in the United States is being silenced by regulators across the pond in Brussels. And the truth is, that's happening. Just look at these documents from TikTok. This is the Community Guidelines Survey. If we can put that one up too. I just want to read the highlight. The primary motivation for the next round of community guidelines updates is to achieve compliance with the Digital Services Act. So here again, Europe's trying to influence speech and everything around the world. And what did TikTok censor in the US to placate the Europeans? Let's go to the next document. I think this censored, quote, marginalized speech and behavior, media presented out of context. I think that happens every single day, and probably in this committee. We're always putting unanimous consensus about this media, that one. They'll enter from something from the New York Times, we'll enter something from Fox or something like that. That happens all the time. TikTok censored true information and political speech on topics like immigration in the United States because of European censorship demands. But it gets worse. It's not just the European Commission is regulating the content moderation guidelines. Often they directly ask platforms, how are they handling US speech? In 2024, the Vice President of the European Commission, Vera Jourova, traveled all the way to California to meet with TikTok to discuss US election preparations. Now, why on earth would the EU, let's put this one up too, why on earth would the EU travel to California to talk about US elections? Is the Vice President, Ms. Jourova, is she interested in discussing both EU and US election preparations, or to stay mostly focused on the EU? Her response, we're interested in both. I mean, that to me is just unbelievable. But again, this is where the Digital Services Act is taking us. The answer is obvious. The European Commission is trying to censor speech and meddle in elections worldwide. Now the Europeans try to hide what they're doing. They say that these censorship requirements are voluntary and achieved through consensus. But we don't think that's true either. When the European Commission makes censorship demands, platforms have to listen. Platforms set it themselves in internal emails that we also got with our subpoenas. Let's put this one up too, because I think this again captures it as well. Let's put the next one up there too. Following one, there we go. Yeah, let's just look at the bottom one. The European Commission is opening the Gen AI subgroup under the Code of Practice. I assume we want to join, and of course, then comes the truth. We don't really have a choice. We don't really have a choice. Europeans try to hide what they're doing. They say that these censorship requirements are voluntary, but they're not, they're achieved through consensus, but we know that's not true, as I said, and platforms have said it in this document. Finally, I just want to say today we have some victims of European censorship. Ms. Rasanen, a doctor, devout Christian and grandmother of 12. She tweeted out a Bible verse and is on trial under Finland's hate speech law. And that's the kind of censorship Europeans want worldwide. Mr. Linehan, I'm sure the left is going to be especially mad at you because you used to be one of them. We had a similar witness. We had a similar witness a couple years ago. Matt Taibbi was part of the Twitter files and exposing what was going on there. He was and probably still is left of center, but he stood for free speech, sat right where you guys are sitting. And here's what happened to him. Democrats called him a so-called journalist. They asked him to divulge his sources in the middle of that hearing. After the hearing, they tried to criminally refer Mr. Taibbi. And here's the kicker. During the hearing, while he's sitting there testifying, the IRS was actually at his home knocking on his door while he was testifying. You talk about intimidation. While he was testifying to Congress, the Biden administration had the IRS make a friendly visit to his home. So we appreciate you being here as well. I don't think that's going to happen today because we have different folks in the White House. But we appreciate all our witnesses here. We will get to you in just a few minutes. But first, I'm going to yield to the ranking member for an opening statement, and then we'll get to your 5-minute testimony. With that, the gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Thanks to the witnesses for joining us. Our colleagues want to have a hearing today about the First Amendment under attack, so let's have it. Our freedom of speech, our freedom of assembly, our right to petition government for a redress of grievances, our right to a free press are all under siege today by President Trump and his masked agents at ICE, who operate like a lawless private paramilitary force occupying American communities across the country. In the last several weeks, ICE agents have killed Renee Good, a U.S. citizen and 37-year-old mother of three, gunning her down in cold blood simply for exercising her First Amendment rights. They've killed Alex Preddy, a U.S. citizen and ICU nurse treating military veterans for exercising his right to record government officials in action and to speak to and render aid and comfort to another U.S. citizen, a woman who was violently shoved to the ground by an ICE agent. This small act of kindness, solidarity, and dare I say chivalry then brought the hellfire of a gang of masked ICE agents down on Alex Preddy. As they pummeled him, one agent discovered Preddy's firearm, which Preddy had never drawn or brandished, despite the instantaneous lies the Trump administration spewed out about him after he was killed. The agent confiscated his weapon, which he carried lawfully under the Second Amendment in Minnesota's state's conceal and open carry laws, and then the ICE agents proceeded to shoot him 10 times, executing him in cold blood simply for exercising his First Amendment and Second Amendment rights. In Chicago, Border Patrol police shot 5 times U.S. citizen Marimar Martinez, a Montessori school teacher, when she was on her way from her home to church to deliver clothes she'd collected for the poor. When she saw the now familiar to us aggressive, violent raid taking place against people in her own neighborhood, she honked her horn to warn people. This prompted an agent to swerve his car into hers, at which point he began shooting directly into her car. She could, quote, feel bullets continue to pierce her body all over. Quote, I saw my life flash before me and slowly began to think, this is the end of me, she told a shadow hearing yesterday on Capitol Hill. In a now predictable pattern, phony charges against her for ramming the police car were filed, but then promptly dropped by prosecutors when they were clearly contradicted by the video recorded facts on the ground. Miraculously, she has lived to tell the story, traumatized by our government, her own government, but undaunted in standing up for her community and for American freedom. I could recite, Mr. Chairman, equally gruesome cases to you for the next 2 hours if we had the time, but everyone should check out the sickening case of Aliyah Rahman, a 43-year-old citizen with autism in Minneapolis who was violently accosted and assaulted by ICE agents as she tried to make her way to a medical appointment. She screamed she was disabled and begged to be left alone. You must look at the footage of her violent abuse at the hands of these masked ICE goons smashing her car window and pulling her to the ground to believe that something like this could ever happen in the United States of America. Of course, the Department of Homeland Security lied about her, immediately calling the helpless autistic woman an agitator, the way they originally tried to defame Renee Good and Alex Preddy as domestic terrorists with their pathetic propaganda they had to withdraw. If there are domestic terrorists on the loose in Minneapolis, it's not the unmasked people exercising their First Amendment rights. It's the masked agents who believe they operate with impunity and immunity and violent domination over the lowly citizens of America. So yeah, we need a hearing today, Mr. Chairman. It's been more than a month since 3,000 agents descended on Minneapolis, outnumbering the entire local police force 3-1. It's been 4 weeks since they shot and killed Renee Good. It's been 10 days since Alex Preddy was executed in broad daylight by ICE agents whose salaries we pay and who got a $50,000 sign-on bonus and whose ranks almost certainly include pardoned January 6 insurrectionists like Proud Boys and Oath Keepers who now may have gone from beating the daylights out of our police officers on January 6th to beating the daylights out of our citizens. But in all that time, how many administration witnesses has the majority called to address these outrageous violations of the Bill of Rights? Not one. A few days ago, you know, Mr. Chairman, every Democratic member of our committee wrote to you and asked that you call Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem before us without delay. We wrote, this committee has devoted years of oversight to alleged First Amendment violations by social media companies, and we've subpoenaed foreign companies over censorship abroad. But look what's happening right here in front of our own eyes. Federal agents have shot dead 2 Americans in the past 2 weeks for exercising their rights to protest. We are glad that you have heeded our calls and called Secretary Noem in, but instead of demanding that she appear immediately today, her hearing is set from a month from now. But this is a constitutional emergency today. The government is destroying our social contract by attacking the people and our rights on a daily basis. Where is the sense of urgency, Mr. Chairman? It may be the giant Republican donor and Jeffrey Epstein pal Elon Musk is upset that his company's on the hook for violating the law in Europe. Maybe that the public is angry at him about his platform Grok creating nude photos on demand of women, children, and men all over the world. It may be that he was fined for refusing to comply with the European law against fraud. We can look at all that stuff. In normal times, I'd appreciate a vigorous scholarly discussion and debate about all of that, comparing Europe's aggressive, proactive approach to America's more laissez-faire approach when it comes to regulating online evils like child pornography, cyberbullying, and the epidemic of cyber scams taking place online. I'm an academic, as you know, and I'd welcome one more committee seminar on the difference in views of the Europeans versus the Americans on things like revenge porn, AI programs that compose suicide notes for teenagers, and racist conspiracy theories being promoted online. But we've got time for all of that, Mr. Chairman. This is an emergency today, what's taking place in our own country. These are not normal times. There are sweeping, blatant, and violent attacks on the freedom of expression taking place right now in America, not in Brussels, not in Geneva, not in a seminar room in Oxford. Wherever you come down on child pornography, whether you agree with the aggressive European approach or you like the Elon Musk, Jeffrey Epstein libertarian approach, whatever, the truth is that the European Commission is not posing a threat to our essential freedoms and constitutional rights today. The threat to our freedom and our people today comes from the authoritarian violence unleashed by the Trump administration and this reign of political terror and lawlessness being committed against our people. As the chief federal judge of Minnesota wrote last week, ICE has violated orders in January 2026 than some federal agencies have violated in their entire existence. ICE is not a law unto itself. Mr. Mayel, you're the executive director of the ACLU. We're grateful you've come to tell us what's going on in your state and to help us make sense of the idea that a European statute that no one in America has ever heard of poses a greater threat to our freedom and our Bill of Rights than roving gangs of masked ICE agents gunning down American citizens in broad daylight. Mr. Chairman, let's bring in Secretary Noem without any further delay. Thank you for your indulgence, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Just a couple quick comments. 4 weeks from today, Ms. Secretary Noem will be sitting right here in front of the committee. 1 week from today, Attorney General Bondi will be sitting here. The European Commission, I think our witnesses would argue, is a threat. Just ask Dr. Rassanen what's happened to her. And I would point out, we've had Democrat witnesses here. In fact, last Congress, we had a Democrat witness who at the time was a Democrat candidate for president, RFK Jr., and the Democrats in that committee hearing, it was a hearing on censorship. You can't make this stuff up. It was a hearing on censorship, and the Democrats made a motion to go to executive session. So no media could be in the room to hear what RFK Jr. was going to testify to in a hearing on censorship. You can't make it up. So I appreciate the ranking member's critique there, but I think there's plenty of critique to go around. We will now move to to introduce today's witnesses. Well, first, without objection, all of the opening statements will be included in the record. Today's witnesses, we will start with Mr. Lorcan Price, who's been with us before, is an attorney with Alliance Defending Freedom International, a nonprofit organization that works to protect religious freedom, free speech, parental rights, and the sanctity of life. Before joining ADF International, he was an attorney in Ireland. Mr. Graham Linehan is a comedian, director, and journalist, and now Fox News. I saw him this morning. I'm working out this morning. I see you doing an interview on Fox News. In September of 2025, he was arrested upon his arrival at London Heathrow Airport for tweets he posted while he was in the United States. Dr. Päivi Räsänen is a member of the Finnish Parliament, medical doctor, former Minister of the Interior. She was first elected to Parliament in 1995. That's a long time in Parliament. God bless you. In 2021, she was criminally charged for tweeting a Bible verse. Mr. Deepinder Mayal, I think I got that close. Deepinder Mayal is the executive director of the ACLU of Minnesota. He previously served as executive director of the James H. Binger Center for New Americans at the University of Minnesota Law School. We welcome all our witnesses. Thank you for being here today. We will begin by swearing you in. If you'd please stand, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, so help you God? Let the record reflect that the witnesses have answered in the affirmative. Thank you. Please be seated. Please know that your written testimony will be entered into the record in its entirety. Accordingly, we ask that you summarize your testimony in 5 minutes. I think we will start with Mr. Price, and then Mr. Linehan, and then Ms. Rasmussen. So, look, Mr. Price, you're welcome, recognized, and welcome to begin.
Thank you very much, Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Raskin, distinguished members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to share the panel today with fellow Irishman, Graham Linehan. I'm not a comedy writer, so I won't make a joke about two Irishmen who walk into Congress. Of course, I might be arrested on returning to London, as you did experience, Graham. I'm also delighted to share it with our client, Päivi Räsänen, who will speak in due course about her ordeal in Finland. On the last occasion that we spoke, ladies and gentlemen, on this subject, we had a discussion on the censorship potential of the EU's Digital Services Act. And at that point, we were speaking in the theoretical. It may cause censorship. It has the potential to affect Americans and so on. And many were not convinced. However, now it's unmistakable that it has indeed caused the censorship that we warned of. We have moved from theory to practice. There can be no doubt that the European Digital Services Act is the tip of a massive censorship industrial complex. The enormous fines levied on X Corporation by the European Commission since the last hearing has proved beyond all doubt that the European Union means to strangle free speech by a systemic assault on US companies. The EU has a multi-pronged strategy to open multiple investigations, to add more and more regulations, and to impose crippling fines, and ultimately, I fear, to attempt to break up or ban companies such as X who are pro-free speech. But it goes deeper. This censorship campaign is not just aimed at destroying free speech in Europe. It's about imposing European laws globally. Make no mistake that Europe's draconian speech laws are being imposed on your citizens via global content moderation rules, as indeed this committee's investigation has so amply pointed out. The EU's obsession with eliminating free speech means they have a global campaign to ensure that all speech online and platforms that allow it are banning illegal content to prevent, quote, systemic risk to the discourse. US companies are therefore transformed into a global censorship police. They must engage in a process of analyzing, quote, how platform design, algorithms, and content moderation impacts public debate, misinformation, and media pluralism. This is what is being forced on American companies today. If they don't comply, then they face possibly endless investigations and crippling fines. There are multiple ongoing investigations into X, including for not allowing illegal content. In Europe, illegal content can mean calling a German politician an idiot or posting, as we know, a Bible verse. So let's be clear, what's happening to X now is that free speech is such a threat to the European elites that they will either cripple X with fines and investigations, break up the company, or force them to bend the knee at the altar of censorship. I hope that they stand strong, because we need free speech in Europe now more than ever. I want to commend this committee on its investigation, which shows that US companies are already having to adopt EU standards in relation to their content moderation policies. So it is directly affecting, to answer Congressman Raskin's point, First Amendment rights of Americans today in practice. There are ongoing actions as well under the Digital Markets Act and various other regulations. And I think it's fair to say that it's become a point where the European Union has fines of American companies as a line item in their annual budget. Last year, roughly 3.8 billion euro was levied in fines against US companies. National countries are also trying to get into the act. We saw that the French police raided X's offices in Paris just this week, and the Spanish Prime Minister has announced criminal liability against company owners for so-called hate speech. I have submitted in my written testimony excerpts of the ridiculous hate speech laws that we have to suffer under in Europe. Of course, hate speech has no real meaning other than speech they hate. And what I would say to our American friends is you cannot allow the EU's rules on hate speech to be imposed on the entire digital world via the DSA. Americans know how this goes when this committee in the past has exposed censorship around COVID. Text censorship denudes and eliminates free speech online. The threat is real and it is with us now. Thank you very much, and I look forward to our discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Mr. Linehan, excuse me, you are recognized for 5 minutes. Make sure you hit the mic there, yeah. Pull that mic close and fire away.
Thank you, and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Graham Linehan. I spent 30 years writing comedy for British television. It was a career I loved, but it ended when I began noticing that women were losing their livelihoods, their social circles, and even their freedom for defending rights won over 100 years ago by the suffragette movement. I looked into what these women were saying and could find nothing wrong with any of it. They believed, as I do, that single-sex spaces are essential for women's privacy, dignity, and safety. They believe that children should not undergo experimental medical treatment that ravages their health and shortens their lives. They believe that women have a right to fair sport. These were not extreme positions, but for holding them, I became the target of a series of harassment campaigns that cost me my career, my marriage, and eventually drove me from my homeland. For a decade, the British police have harassed me for expressing views that the majority of the public share. In 10 years, not one person, not the police who arrested me, not the colleagues who condemned me, not the friends who turned away, has told any of us what we did wrong. Our accusers do not deal in arguments. No one is able to point to the flaws in our analysis. We have simply been punished for objecting to fashionable yet incoherent orthodoxies. When I could no longer make a living writing comedy, I returned to journalism, which was my first profession. On my Substack, I interviewed cancelled women on my YouTube channel covering stories the BBC refused to touch. On my Substack, my colleague published a weekly roundup of outrages. We called it the War on Women. We were never at a loss for stories. This committee is here to discuss threats to free speech in Europe, but I briefly want to touch on the forms of quiet censorship that don't require state suppression. For the state has learned to let others do its work. When employers fire workers for protected speech, when banks close accounts, when publishers drop authors, when platforms suspend users, the government's hands stay clean. The censorship happens. The state didn't do it. In Britain, we have discovered that you can have formal free speech and no free speech at all. I want everyone to understand that gender ideology and free speech cannot coexist. You can hear the lie in the very language. Trans woman meaning man, trans man meaning woman, trans healthcare meaning the opposite of healthcare, trans rights meaning men's demands. An ideology that tells lesbians they are bigoted for not accepting male partners is not progressive, it is homophobic. And I will bring this home to Washington for a second. Right now, a man named Hobby Bingham, who calls himself Princess Zoe Andromeda Love, is a registered sex offender in this country. He raped a 12-year-old girl. He was transferred to the Washington Correction Center for Women, where he raped a developmentally disabled female inmate. This is not happening in Britain. This is happening here. These are the policies we are being asked to accept. And just as in the United Kingdom, those who refuse pay with their livelihoods, their reputations, their peace of mind. Finally, I'm asking the committee to do three things. First, use every diplomatic lever you have to pressure the British government to implement its own Supreme Court ruling. Women just won a landmark case confirming that sex means biological sex. The guidance to enforce it has been written, and the Minister for Women and Equalities has blocked it for months, calling it trans-exclusive. If the British government can ignore its own Supreme Court to appease gender activists, so can yours. Please make it clear that America is watching. Second, put pressure on the Irish government to reopen a conversation it never had. In 2015, while Irish people were celebrating their vote for marriage equality, the Gender Recognition Act was quietly passed. No public consultation, no referendum, no women's rights organisations consulted. The public did not know what they were signing up for. They do now. The consequences are visible across Irish life. Men in women's prisons, men in women's sport, children taught lies in their schools. Ireland is my country of birth. Its women and girls deserve the debate that they were denied. Third, recognise that free speech is not preserved simply by declining to arrest people. People from all walks of life are being silenced by the institutions that license and employ them. We need new whistleblower protections for the digital age. If government will not defend dissenters from institutional retaliation and mob rule, then what is the First Amendment for? That's not an abstract question. The women who lost their careers, the children who lost their health, the athletes who lost fair competition, they did not have a voice in the decisions that failed them. I am asking you to give them one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Linehan. Doctor, you're now recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Raskin, and members of the committee, thank you so much for inviting me to speak with you today. My name is Päivi Räsänen. I'm from Finland, and I'm a medical doctor, and I have served previously as a member of the, I now serve as a member of the Finnish Parliament since 1995, but previously I have served as a Minister of Interior. I love my country. Finland is a democracy that was built on the rule of law and fundamental freedoms. These values matter deeply to me as a European and as a Christian. More than 6 years ago, in 2019, I expressed my Christian beliefs about marriage and sexuality in a Twitter post. I directed my post to my church, the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Finland, in response to their decision to participate in a parade, Pride, which I believe contradicts our Christian faith. I added a picture of some scripture verses with a post that guided my perspective on this issue. I did so peacefully, without targeting or insulting anyone. For this exercise of my free speech, I was investigated by the police. I was interrogated for more than 13 hours, and I was charged with criminal hate speech. In addition to the Twitter post, I also was criminally charged for a short pamphlet on human sexuality I had written for the church years earlier, in addition to comments I made in a radio discussion. Lutheran Bishop Juhana Pohjola was charged alongside me for publishing my pamphlet for the church. Under Finnish law, our charges fall under the section of the Criminal Code dealing with war crimes and crimes against humanity and can carry up to 2 years of prison time. This was difficult to comprehend. I want to be very clear. I didn't insult anyone. I simply expressed my convictions rooted in my faith. Twice, Finnish courts unanimously acquitted me. They ruled that no crime had been committed. Despite these clear rulings, the state prosecution continued to pursue their charges against me. And last October, the Supreme Court of Finland heard my case alongside that of Bishop Pohjola. My defense was based on the freedoms of speech and religion protected by Finnish, European, and international law. The bishop and I are now awaiting the decision of the Supreme Court. This case has never been only about us. It is about whether peaceful expression of deeply held beliefs can be treated as a criminal act in today's Europe. It is about whether citizens, including clergy and elected representatives, may speak openly on matters of conscience without fear of prosecution. It is about whether it is illegal to say what you believe. Our story shows how the process itself becomes the punishment. We have faced years of legal uncertainty. This creates a chilling effect for everyone who holds views outside a narrow state-approved consensus. When the state controls which ideas and beliefs may be expressed, democracy becomes fragile. Speech that is lawful today can become criminalized tomorrow. This should concern every person that values freedom. I have been supported by my faith, and thousands of expressions of support I have received from around the world, including many from the US Congress. I remain hopeful. I trust that freedom of expression can still be upheld. It is too important to lose. My wish is simple, that Europe and our democratic partners remain places where every person can speak freely. And I'm pleased with the good relations between United States and Finland and hope that they will continue to strengthen. Thank you for listening and thank you for your commitment to freedom.
Thank you, Doctor. Mr. Mayall, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Raskin, and members of the committee, thank you for the invitation to testify today. My name is Dipinder Mayal, and I am honored to serve as the Executive Director of the ACLU of Minnesota. And I appreciate this committee's interest in free speech, and I'm here today to talk with you about what is happening in my home state of Minnesota, which feels like it is under siege, and where the First Amendment rights that we all cherish are under attack in a more grave way than I have ever experienced in my life. If you have not been on the ground in Minnesota in recent weeks, it is hard to imagine how un-American it has felt, and I want to give you a firsthand account. For the people in Minnesota, this is a time of profound grief, fear, and outrage. In recent weeks, we have experienced violence, chaos, and abuse at the hands of hundreds and now thousands of masked law enforcement agents brandishing weapons of war on American streets. 2 people have been shot and killed for observing and protesting the actions of federal agents, Renee Good and Alex Preddy. Witnesses to their deaths are their neighbors and fellow Minnesotans. One witness to Mr. Preddy's killing submitted a sworn statement to court in our lawsuit, Tincher versus Nome, saying that they were so afraid of retaliation, they went into hiding. Quote, "I do not feel safe in my city," said another witness to Mr. Preddy's death. This person was a doctor who had run to the scene to perform CPR on him. Quote, "I worry that I or someone I love will be shot and killed for voicing their displeasure and being in the wrong place at the wrong time." End quote. This is not the America we recognize. This is not the America and the free country that we cherish. It is not the America we deserve, nor the one that our laws or Constitution allow. At the worst moments, it has felt like we are living in a police state. Agents have stormed our parks and schoolyards. They have blocked our streets. They have barricaded store parking lots. They have thrown tear gas in front of our homes. They have pepper sprayed peaceful protesters and indiscriminately pointed semi-automatic weapons in the faces of American citizens. People living in the United States are not and should not have to be accustomed to armed agents demanding to see their papers, but that's now happened in far too many places in the region. Heavily armed mass squads have broken into people's homes and dragged American citizens into the street. And if you appear to ICE or Border Patrol as a possible immigrant, you risk being snatched off the street, often with physical violence, and being put into detention. And although many Minnesotans are peacefully protesting, thousands of Minnesotans are now afraid to leave their homes. Public schools in Minneapolis closed the week of January 8th after federal agents pepper sprayed, tackled, and handcuffed multiple people. According to school district officials from Fridley and Richfield, more than 30% of students were absent from classes that week. Across the region, children are still learning online due to fear of attending school. Business and commercial districts are like ghost towns, as the very presence of federal agents make people terrified to go about their daily life, and immigrant community members and neighbors have not left their homes in weeks, avoiding even basic daily activities like buying groceries, picking up prescriptions, or going to work. This is not an unintended impact, it is intentional. The administration has deployed thousands of agents in a bid to spread fear, cause people to flee the country they call home, and make the rest of us too afraid to speak out. These agents are bound by the Constitution, yet they have broken dozens of our laws and agency policies. as well as the faith of the American communities they are meant to protect. I'm here to ask you, as members of Congress, to act. Our cherished rights, all of our cherished rights, are at stake. Please use the power of the purse to rein in this unprecedented, lawless, and dangerous escalation in our community. We urge you to demand that federal forces withdraw from Minnesota now before another life is taken. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now proceed with 5-minute questions from members. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Kiley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to our witnesses. History shows that freedom of speech is rare and that censorship and repression are common. And perhaps the primary principle that has set the United States apart throughout our 250-year history is our commitment to freedom of speech as the foundation of our democracy and self-government. And yet, even here, we witness threats to freedom of speech from time to time. And thanks to the work of this committee, we were able to uncover the extent to which censorship took hold during the prior administration in pressuring social media companies to censor the content and speech of American citizens. For example, on perhaps the most significant event in generations, the COVID-19 pandemic, individuals were forbidden from positing a theory as to how it started that likely turned out to be true. Or in the run-up to the 2020 election, damaging information about one of the presidential candidates was systematically censored on social media, which the leaders of those companies have now admitted was wrong. Indeed, in response to this committee's investigation, Mr. Zuckerberg of Facebook has stated that it was wrong for that platform to respond to the censorship demands of the Biden administration. Thankfully, we are in a much different place in this country now, although in some parts of the country there still is an impulse to censor. In my state of California, the governor, Gavin Newsom, saw a parody video that was criticizing Kamala Harris right before the 2024 election, promptly called for a law to ban the video. It was signed. Thankfully, that was struck down by the courts in short order. We still do have checks and balances here. But increasingly, we're seeing that the threats to the freedom of speech of American citizens emanate from abroad, as the different approach that some of our European allies have taken to freedom of speech has become even more different and systematic and global in nature in recent years. So, Mr. Lanahan, I want you to just walk us through what happened to you, because you were in the United States, you put up a tweet. You're a comedian, you use some off-color language, maybe different than the way I would say things sometimes, but that's what you do. And you made a comment about the propriety of biological males being in female-only spaces. Can you tell me exactly what happened when you landed at Heathrow Airport in some detail?
Well, as I said, because I'd been arrested before and because I'm sort of the victim of kind of village gossip on a global scale, when the plane actually taxied to a stop and we were kept there for longer than is usual, I sort of immediately knew that I might be about to be arrested. But when I got to the door, I couldn't believe it. There were 5 police, all of them armed, which is standard in Heathrow. But it was a shock. You know, I didn't see how 5 police were necessary, especially as I was coming into the country to testify in another trial, and they would have known that. So yeah, I have to say, even though it was shocking and unpleasant, and I ended up having such high blood pressure that I had to be transferred to a hospital, in many ways, I'm very glad it happened to me, because my voice has been silent so long in the UK. I'm very much a niche voice because of the kind of control gender ideology has over the whole country, over institutions.
Well, it's also probably the chilling effect, right? You put up a tweet, you say something that you believe, and you're met by 5 armed guards who put you in jail. What effect does that have on other people speaking their minds?
As you know, as you say, chilling effect, who knows? Who knows what effect it has? Oh, you know, the censorship that's at play when it comes to issues around women's rights is a kind of quiet censorship. People are cancelled quietly. They just stop being invited to things. Right. They stop getting contracts and so on. So yeah, that's one of the things I wanted to get across to people, that there's more than one form of censorship. It's not just the government being heavy-handed. It's a sort of orthodoxy that has been imposed across British society, especially in certain industries that attract very privileged middle-class people. So we have publishing, theatre, the media, and the NHS now, which is very frightening. All these institutions have been captured by gender ideology, and no one is objecting to it. Just the fact that no one is objecting to it does not mean that people don't object to it. Do you know what I mean?
That's right, and that is what has been recognized by our courts as the peculiar evil of censorship, is that it ends up silencing a much broader swath of speech and thereby distorts democracy, distorts the values of society, and impedes progress. So that's what we're trying to stop with this hearing today. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Price, I think we've seen you now 4 times. We met you in Brussels, we met you in London. You've come twice to testify here. So we're familiar with your views. I do think you call yourself a civil libertarian, someone who's a champion of free speech. Would you agree with me that nobody should be shot or killed by their government for exercising their freedom of expression?
Absolutely, people shouldn't be killed unless there's obviously there's an investigation, I believe, underway. I think in the instance you're referring to. But
how about reporting on the activities of government officials? Do you think that the public has the right to take notes, to video record, and then to publicly disseminate information about what our police officers, ICE agents, or government officials are doing? Is that part of the freedom of expression?
I think people have the right to share information online, certainly.
Yeah, and our courts have certainly found that. So thank you for coming and contributing your voice on that. Mr. Mayo, thank you for coming all the way from Minnesota. I hope you don't feel like you've entered the twilight zone here. We're having another hearing about the imaginary threat to the transphobic material of Irish comedians against the European Union, and we can't seem to have a hearing about ICE agents shooting Americans in the face for exercising their First Amendment rights. Please give us a sense of your experience of what the topic of this hearing is versus what's going on in our country.
Thank you. I'm here to talk about the most significant threat to free speech